I I feel like the catering business, there's so much little secrets and nuggets that you have to figure out along the way to actually make money. Like the money's there to be made, but it's kind of hard if you don't know what you're doing. And I feel like working with people like you or going to Catersource changed the game for us.
It's back to my statement. It's networking. It's getting to know people. It's talking to people and having fun. Our industry is 98% of the time fun, or at least it should be, right?
Yeah.
And I think people got to get out of their little shell and just do it, and the rewards are immense.
All right, everybody, welcome to the Duce Raymond Podcast. Today, I have a very special guest, Jennifer Perna. Welcome to the show.
Thanks, Duce. Glad to be here.
So Jennifer and I have a long relationship. She's helped us so much in the catering industry, and I'm very excited to talk to her today. I joked with her earlier. I'm probably going to end up getting a bill in the mail for her consulting services because I'm going to ask some personal questions here too today.
Today's free.
All right, good. Jennifer, why don't you just give us the quick 2-minute how you got in the industry, where you started, and kind of what you're up to right now.
Okay, I'll make this quick. I could use a whole half hour, but I won't do that to you. Originally from upstate New York, Rochester, New York. Okay. Started working at a local family bakery when I was 15. I totally knew I wanted to be in hospitality when I was a youngster. Studied hotel management at Cornell and found my way to Chicago on a college internship. So I moved here. I'm dating myself now, but over 30 years ago. Worked at a couple hotels for a few years and then found myself in off-premise catering. Worked for 2 different major caterers in the downtown Chicago market. Always focused in sales. I started as a entry-level salesperson, moved into a director of sales position at the first company, and then moved over to a company called BluePlate, where I finished my company. Yeah, just a little catering company. Finished my catering career. I managed a really large sales team of 32 people. We were doing well over 25 million in sales when I was there, which is incredible as an independent caterer. And 7 years ago, started my own hospitality consulting business called Fulton Market Consulting. That's when you and I met. You were one of my first clients, which was great. Awesome. And I've been doing that now for 7 years. I do most of my work on both coasts. I do tons of work in the DC market, do a lot of work in Southern California. And I like to say, I just like to help catering companies make more money. That's my job. That's what I do. And I love it. So I travel all over the world doing that.
I feel like the catering business, there's so much little secrets and nuggets that you have to figure out along the way to actually make money. Like the money's there to be made, but it's kind of hard if you don't know what you're doing. And I feel like working with people like you or going to Catersource changed the game for us. It really
That's great.
In the beginning. How do you suggest to people to use different resources when they're first getting started out in catering?
I mean, the first thing I'd say to everyone and what you just said, it's networking. Like, I think at times we just stay in our own 4 walls and don't get out there and meet people. Mm-hmm. I would say 98% of the catering communities are friendly with each other. I know a few towns where it's not as nice. But back when I started, this is a joke, but it's not. I started a group called Caterers Can Be Friends. and it was because I wanted to meet people. And this was literally I bet that was 25 years ago. And it just, we had a little networking group. We'd go out for wine once a month and just talk to each other and didn't see it as competitive, but more peer-to-peer coaching each other. So to that point, you already mentioned it, Catersource. It's a game changer. I still go every year. Mm-hmm. I still learn things every year. I've been doing this over 30 years. I was the president of the International Caterers Association. That was a game changer for me because you want to have
board for Catersource and the ICA.
Catersource doesn't have the board anymore. Okay. ICA, I will forever be involved because I was the president. So I'm something called, I guess I'm a retired president now. It's the President's Council. So I'll be a member for life. Right. But to that point, I'm actually getting in the car and driving to Maine this summer. I'm going to be doing a whole East Coast road trip visiting some clients, but I'm going with Maine as the end destination because I'm going to an ICA workshop in Portland, Maine. And, back to my statement, it's networking, it's getting to know people, it's talking to people and having fun. Our industry is 98% of the time fun, or at least it should be, right?
Yeah.
And I think people got to get out of their little shell and just do it. And the rewards are immense.
I agree. So when you were at BluePlate, you grew sales 167%. That's in your bio. That's pretty crazy. What were some of like the top 2 or 3 tactics you used to kind of accelerate your growth? Where did you look for business? What kind of, was it because of you just hired so many salespeople, they hit the ground, or how did you get there?
Well, thank you for looking at my bio. First and foremost, I joined BluePlate, if we all remember the 2008 recession.
Oh boy.
Yeah. So I started with them in August of 2008. So it was I don't want to say it was easy to grow 167%, but everyone was down that year.
Down. And so you had a runway.
I'll tell you this, it's not necessarily about tactics, but I can get to that eventually. But what I was tasked with from the start was building a structure that was a sound structure that allowed the team to grow.
Okay.
And that was sorry, my phone just went cool. That was a critical step, which was recognizing are all the right players on the team. Mm-hmm. And now that we got the right people on the bus, let's move the bus forward. And so I did that. I will always say my mentor, Nancy Wright, brought me on. And what she had done at that point was really start building a strong executive leadership team.
Right.
So she did it piece by piece. She brought in our executive chef, Paul Larson, first. Then she brought in me. And then we brought in a director of operations by the name of Dan Joseph, who's operating partner there right now. And then we brought in a CFO. His name was Calvin Jin. And all of us work together as a core leadership team to make the right decisions moving forward.
And
now, do I think
have goals for you guys to look at? Like, did he know he wanted to do, 20 million in sales at the time, or did it kind of just like grow into that as you guys were kind of building?
I think that grew into it. One of the greatest things, and the owner's name is Jim Horan. One of the greatest things Jim did, and Nancy at one point, is we all, if you've heard of Zingerman's up in Ann Arbor, Michigan, we all went to Zingerman's and did something called Zing Train, which I still always highly recommend to people. Zing Train taught us how to vision. And to that point, Jim and Nancy put together our 10-year vision of what we wanted the company to be.
Nice.
And that was a really powerful, impactful experience for us. And we brought up, I think it probably was about 20 to 30 people, and we brought up every level of every position at the company. It wasn't just the leadership team. We brought different people from the warehouse, serving, people from the service side. We brought up everyone to get their input on how we grew the business. And that's eventually how we moved into that new facility when I was there, because we really put together a vision statement for that.
Right. It's an amazing story. I mean, BluePlate has I have so much respect for what they do, and just to see them grow and produce some of the food that they do and the service that they do at the level that they're at is just unbelievable. And
they're a wonderful company. Wonderful company.
Charlie was just on the podcast. He's like a childhood friend of mine. His family and my family had a relationship, and so proud of him there, just to see some of the stuff that he's working on, and excited to do more with that too.
That's so cool. Yeah, they do wonderful things. I miss them, but I'm still just so lucky. I literally live down the block from them, so I'm lucky I'm a neighbor.
That's awesome.
And it's pretty cool. Yeah, it's cool.
It's very cool. Now, as a growing caterer, people come to me for questions all the time. One of the most relevant questions that I get is people are starting to grow, and they're like a barbecue restaurant that wants to do catering, or they're just starting in the catering world. They ask, how do you pay your salespeople? And this is one of the most important things. You want to pay them well so they're motivated to get more. You can't give away the farm, otherwise you won't be in business anymore. And this is one thing that you helped us a lot with. So at a high level, without getting too far in the nitty-gritty, how do catering companies that succeed pay their salespeople?
Okay, the key is salespeople, because you want them selling, not being account managers. That's number one.
Okay.
I am a very strong believer in commission-based compensation. So what would I advise anyone as they're trying to start this, and I'll keep this very high level, offer a 2-year sales compensation to whoever you hire. The first year you have to recognize they always need to be on a salary that's livable. Okay. So your first year, it needs to be salary based, because you're probably not going to get as much sales out of them in year one. Okay.
It's just the nature of the beast. You got to work your
Exactly.
venues, work your leads for corporate and stuff like that.
Exactly. So you want to give them something that's livable, but you want to, I always say, dangle the carrot with some sort of commission. Okay. And the reason I like to do 2 years, because that first year really is training and investment time on the ownership's part too, as well. You know what I mean? Sure. Year 2, I want you to, you can make a decision. You can keep the salary where it is and kickstart a higher, stronger commission structure. Or I often would say, I reduced the salary, because at that point they have their sea legs, right? They know what they're doing. And I would do a higher commission base and offer commission. But that's what I like to see people do. I will say, since COVID, commission has been harder for people and harder for salespeople to understand and justify. I think that's all past now. And I'm seeing people going back to what we were doing in 2019 with those comp structures. I like that. I want real salespeople, and real salespeople want to be on commission. Amen.
No order takers.
Yep. And last comment, a salesperson should never cost the company anything.
So and I was going to bring this up later, but we'll talk about it now since you brought it up. So this is Catering Chronicles by Jennifer and Francisco Christian, who I know I've met Francisco at Catersource one year, but it was brief. So I'm not super familiar with him.
He goes by Frank. You probably know him more as Frank Christian.
Oh, okay. So there's a couple questions on my list that are going to refer to in this book, which is, this is great, especially like if you're getting into catering, or you have, you're doing a couple million in sales and you want to get to that next level. Definitely check this book out.
Thank you,
Jennifer. Very good.
On Amazon.
All right. So in the book, it says, speaking about catering people, like 5 things a manager should do today to help them succeed. And the very first thing is continued education for your salespeople. Give us a couple examples of what that looked like for you when you were running the sales department, and some of the things that you suggest to sales managers that you coach.
Okay, I think my most successful salespeople have a logistics background, because catering sales is so complicated. Catering is so complicated. Let me take a step back. And when I say education, use your executive chef to come into a sales meeting and teach them about food. Use what's under your roof to start.
Okay. Because
there's so much that people need to learn. I think the learning process, honestly, is at least 2 years to be a successful off-premise catering salesperson. You have to learn all your venues. You have to learn what every piece of equipment all the use of equipment. There's so many elements to off-premise catering. And this is something I always say to people: we are a moving restaurant.
Yeah,
okay.
Right.
So what I mean by that is salespeople need to understand furniture. They need to understand loading docks. They need to understand freight elevators. They need to understand alleyway entrances. Every single event is different, which is why off-premise catering is so cool. Okay. But you need a lot of time to learn that. And quite often people aren't patient with that. So what I used to do in my sales meetings is I used to do 1 sales meeting a month, which a lot of people find shocking, but I wanted focused attention and salespeople to really want to be there. But what I would do is an hour of administrative sales meeting stuff. And then I would do an hour of education every month. And I would try and keep it within our own, as I said, under our own roof. But there'd be times I'd bring in different experts. We're here in Chicago. We have a wonderful aquarium called the Shed Aquarium. We brought in someone from the Shed Aquarium, 1 sales meeting, to teach the sales team about safe seafood. in like the seafood watch program. So we were able to understand what we should be selling and what we shouldn't be selling. And that all like comes around because when you're selling that smart way, customers have more confidence in you and they're going to remember you over anyone else when you're talking about that kind of stuff. I would absolutely do that.
They look to you as the expert and they expect you to know these things, everything about the venue, every dietary restriction and all.
Totally.
I mean, all this
and you
stuff.
should.
Yeah, for sure.
I always say this, buying a wedding's like buying a car, right?
It's true. Price-wise, too.
It's price-wise the same. And everyone who's heard me speaking had heard me say this, so they're probably like, oh my goodness. But it really is like, who likes buying a car? Not many people. Like you'd feel kind of vulnerable.
Right.
And you don't know. You don't always want to ask all the questions, but as a really good salesperson, you should guide your customers through that process to make them feel comfortable and not vulnerable.
Right.
And it's kind of a similar process.
Okay, I don't even have to look at my paper when I'm talking to you. What do you think about catering versus corporate? Ideal world, should you break that down in 50-50? Should you push for more corporate, and why? Why are weddings important to a catering business?
Define corporate to me, just for the audience.
Corporate would be like doing Pepsi's company picnic and then a couple things throughout the year for them, like a monthly sales meeting or something like that, like a bigger entity, or corporate could be weekly drop-offs, for 25 or 35 people
too.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's a regional geographic question, honestly.
Oh, okay.
So I think, and I can break this down into a lot of parts.
Let's talk about if you're a Chicago suburb caterer.
You're a Chicago suburban caterer. Good question. We'll target that. I think Chicago's a big convention corporate town. Mm-hmm. So in Chicago, you do see a lot. I'd probably say, and this becomes another question, is it number of events versus revenue? Let's, for this example, say revenue.
Okay.
I would say probably in my dream world in Chicago, I don't know, 60-40 corporate to wedding.
Okay. Fair enough.
Why are weddings great? Because they always exist, even during pandemics.
Yeah.
Weddings also are, they're not an easy sell. They're actually a hard sell. But your venues, who should be a part of your sales process, your venue relationships are just imperative to this conversation.
Right.
But venues, weddings can be booking out 12 months out. It used to be 18 months out. Let's say 12 in a good year now. Yeah. But they're becoming so short term. But then you at least can just kind of gauge where your numbers are falling with wedding business.
Right.
Corporate business, I was a big corporate salesperson, probably because I wasn't as patient for weddings. But corporate sales is great because it's more short term and it's repeat.
Yeah.
And
it's
if you're
easier, you're not dealing with a bride that this is her one time, her biggest specialist day. She's got a million of her own ideas that are unique to her, where you could do, this is what I tell people, you could do a $25,000 corporate event one year and the next year be on 2 calls with the team from that corporation. They could say, we want the same thing as last year.
Exactly.
Done. And it's like 25 grand.
Other than wanting to always keep it fresh. But it's repeat. Yeah. I mean, and you have to still develop just as strong of a relationship with a corporate customer, if not more so. But you also have to recognize what I call is the selling time. A wedding, you might have a year worth of phone calls.
Right.
It's a lot of time. Now, again, weddings are pandemic proof. People will always get married and always have weddings. And why I say this is geographic, you might have a venue in a coastal town in the country that you're 99% wedding. That's great. Yeah. That's wonderful. That's you're just always in the mode of, that becomes more like when you have a venue that has catering, you become a real estate salesperson first, and then it's about catering after.
Right.
And that's the difference. But I will say this: if you have a good relationship with a high-end wedding planner, that's that's the best of both worlds. Because having relationships with wedding planners means that you're going to be their go-to caterer
They can bring
and
you
in a
to
lot of ways,
not just one venue, but multiple
right.
venues wherever
And they're
going.
qualifying the client for you already. So,
very good point.
Okay, a 50-50 is a dream. I think Chicago 60-40. I didn't even touch on conventions because convention business is huge. I mean, we have the DNC coming. That's going to be big.
How do you define convention catering? What would that look like? Because
Anything
that's not something we really do.
It's anything that a customer's coming into town for a big convention. Let's pretend the restaurant show, which most people know. That's 100,000 people coming to the city.
Right.
The restaurants get a lot of business, but there always is some offshoot events that come out of those kind of conventions. Like the Democratic National Convention is going to be here in August.
Mm-hmm.
Caterers are going to be slammed. They should be slammed with that kind of business because it's people that are coming to town for like one-off reasons. Right. And they're repeat too a lot of the time.
Mm-hmm. Very interesting. Now, when I explain to people, we've been able to grow significantly over the last 3 or 4 years, which we've been very fortunate, but people ask why or how. And the first thing I always tell people is venue relationships. Venues are really the key holder in the catering space because people go to the venue before they book their caterer. And whoever that venue is going to recommend is going to help you or hurt you, So we've been really fortunate to develop strong venue relationships. In the book, you talked about non-exclusive relationships. Why is it so important for a caterer to have a non-exclusive relationship with a venue?
Versus an exclusive? Yeah. Or just a relationship in general?
Yeah.
Again, this is a geographic regional conversation. A lot of cities are different in their approaches. Okay. So Chicago is a very strong non-exclusive venue community, meaning there's a lot of venues that do not have just one caterer. Now, there are several that have one caterer, but there's a lot that don't. And as a catering salesperson, to your point, that's one of the critical steps in developing and growing your business is getting on venue lists.
For sure.
And really nurturing those relationships with the venue people so they want you as a catering company to always be there. Now, I do think non-exclusive venues they do not necessarily say you should use this caterer. But I do think that they always recognize who takes really good care of their place and who takes really good care of their potential customers. It should be a very collaborative relationship.
At the end of the day, is as a caterer company, are you making the venue look good? Are you taking care of them and the clients and leaving the place cleaner than you found it? All those things you learned from your grandmother,
Exactly right. Exactly right.
It makes a big difference.
Right. And the other thing I'll say, and I don't say this as much often, as a catering company, you have to really recognize when you are not a good fit for a venue too. Like I think oftentimes everyone wants to be on every venue list, and there's a lot of marketing requirements and fees related to some of that stuff. Right. And sometimes you've outgrown that venue or the customers cannot afford you. And you just have to have an honest look. And I always say to everyone, print out your last 5 years of your invoices and tag it by where you did the work and really assess where you've done a lot of work and where you haven't.
Right.
And that's a really good measure as a sales leader is to see what venues have we not been spending time on nurturing that relationship.
Something interesting that we've noticed too is the more the venue charges, the more that they'll have to spend on food too. If you have a low end venue, they're not going to have as much money to spend where, it doesn't really make sense. It's if they just spent less on the venue, they should have more for food, but it's not like that.
No.
So they're really two are correlated. If you want higher ticket items, you got to, play in the venues that are charging $15,000, $18,000 for an
exactly.
For a night.
I mean, everyone has a bucket of money for an event. It's just how it gets broken out. Right.
Yeah. Tell us a little bit how you came to write the Catering Chronicles and when did you do that and what was the reasoning behind it at that time?
So Frank Christian, who you already mentioned, Frank and I, Frank has a consulting business. He's based in New Orleans and his focus is always on the operations side. Okay. He's ops and money and I'm sales, the sales front side. So we always had a mutual respect for each other, and he started his consulting business maybe a year or two after I started mine. So I started mine in 2017, and we all know what happened in 2020.
Yeah.
So Frank and I actually, and I probably should tell this all the time, I think we got each other. I don't think anyone's going to be spending money on consulting during COVID years.
Yeah.
So we decided, let's make a project of it. And we pushed each other. We had weekly calls and we said, let's write a book. Let's just get this going. And that's what we did. And the perspective of the book, and it's a really thin book. You already popped it up. I mean, it's 4 chapters essentially of things that we thought were hot topics that we always heard from our consulting clients. And it was pretty cool. It was our way of just pushing each other forward during that time. You know, the other thing I did with clients is I said, listen, I know that money's not coming in right now. Let me continue to work with you. So I kept myself busy and just said, we'll figure out the money in the long run, but let me just work with you during this time. And it was, I think it was good for all of us, right?
That's very smart business wise.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
Because they can forget about you really fast if you're not
exactly.
Exactly.
And they needed me more than ever. Honestly,
right.
That was the time. So it really worked out. But for Frank, and Frank has his own business, I have my own business. It was just a great collaboration of 2 people that really respect each other. And it's funny because in some of it, you can see the differences of opinions, right? Front of house versus back of house. But we're always very respectful to that. And he and I usually do once a year, we do a webinar for the ICA together. Okay. Where we just kind of always bring stuff up again, the Frank versus Jennifer kind of stuff. It's fun.
Where do you see some interesting catering trends? I know you're always at Catersource, and that's a big topic over there in the ICA. Is there anything that's really sticking out to you from a sales perspective or from we'll call it a fun, culinary perspective? Is there anything that's sticking out to you that's coming up in 2024 or in 2025?
Well, I do think that there's a lot of people doing in-person workshops now. We've already mentioned Catersource. I've already mentioned the International Caterers Association. I go to a conference every year called MIBE, which it's Make It Better Every Day. And the MIBE group is a company that's come out of Footer's Catering in Denver. Incredible company.
Okay,
Incredible.
So they invited me to that, so I got to check that out maybe next year. Okay.
I'll be there in January. You should come. It's wonderful.
Okay. All right.
It's fabulous.
And talk about that event a little bit. Let's see.
It's understanding culture, hospitality, developing unbelievable teamwork amongst your team members. Anthony Lombados started this years ago, and he's incredible. April Lombados, his wife, it's a very interactive 3-day program. And I think Colorado? The world of it. Yeah, they're in Denver.
Okay.
So I think that's great. I go on the ICAEF, the Educational Foundation of the ICA. I go on learning journeys. Now, I have my own business, so I have the time to do this. But I'll travel at least once a year, if not twice a year, to unbelievable countries and learn about food for 10 days. I'm going to Spain in September, and we have a whole culinary tour where I'm starting in Barcelona, going up to San Sebastian, doing the Rioja wine country and ending in Madrid.
That's amazing.
Did Croatia the year prior, did Tuscany the year prior, did Ireland the year prior. And I've really developed unbelievable relationships with the people that go on those trips. It's pretty cool.
That is so cool.
So again, that's all spending money. I do think just from a local standpoint, people should be on Instagram, follow your competitors, follow great caterers in other cities. Like, you can really see what people are doing. And again, let me go back to my first comment, network. You know, when you go to those open house events, bring your team and go around and meet the other caterers, walk in their kitchens and introduce yourself. You know, it's that kind of stuff really goes far.
Yeah.
It really does.
I mean, that's one of the reasons I started doing this podcast, is to keep the lines of communication open to people like you. And I talked about the chef from BluePlate, and I think it's so important, and I think it benefits everybody involed, and hopefully
Absolutely.
The person listening too, you know.
Absolutely.
Now, last year or this year at Catersource, you did a presentation or a talk about different size catering companies and kind of what's the difference between 1 million, 3 million, 10 million, 30 million. What was the most striking thing that stood out to you? Because I found it very hard to kind of crack that profitability code, how our business was set up, until we broke that $4 to $5 million range. Is that common? Yep. Is there kind of a consistency in those sizes of catering companies?
Yeah, I think part of this. Were you in my class? And don't worry if you weren't.
I was there, but I was there like I was coming from another class, so I didn't hear the whole thing. I came in like halfway through.
I think the most impactful thing, and first of all, when we planned this class, the revenue numbers were different than where they ended up. Mm-hmm. But I had essentially two, at that point, $5 million caterers, and I had a $35 million caterer on the stage with me. And I've worked with all three of them. I'm so lucky that I have the opportunity to work with all of them. But you know what the most impactful thing to me was, and this was not even when we were on stage, it was when we were in the development of the content. Mm-hmm. I asked all of them, because they all were 20 years old, nearing 20 years old in business. Mm-hmm. I asked every single one of them to go back and do a timeline of all the impactful events that happened in those 20 years.
I remember seeing that.
That was the best. And all of them, it was amazing when they did that for themselves. And Ryan, who's one of the caterers from Brooklyn, New York, from Dish Food in New York City, he said, this is such an impactful thing that I'm going to share it with my team. Because you could see, and we charted it, where those decisions the owners made, and part of the time it was probably a hiring decision. Mm-hmm. Another part of the time may have been an exclusive venue relationship decision that was either good or bad. You could see the scaling of growth. Mm-hmm. And I think if I'm answering the question, it was, when are you going to make an investment in something that might cost you money that a year or two down the road paid off?
Yeah.
And I think that was the real cool thing that we got to see in that process. It was I loved that class. I don't think we had enough time, unfortunately, because we just scratched the surface of it. No but I think, did that answer your question, Duce?
Well, I was seeing, is there a correlation with how much your sales are to kind of breaking through that profitability stack, where working with founders, like, I know it's real hard to make. We always had a lot more overhead than probably some catering companies. We have a bigger space. We had a lot of salaries. And really what allowed us to really get profitable is actually with COVID, we were able to kind of we had to lean everything out. We just had to do what we had to do. And that kind of allowed us to even get more profitable. But it took us a long time to get there. I mean, I would like to do one of those charts that you were saying, because it's like we started really focusing on catering in 2010, and we really didn't get any significant profit to 2021. You know what I mean? Right. It took us 11 years to really kind of crack that code. And now we're on a great trajectory, but we had to kind of break through a certain level because of our overhead and stuff like that. And we did make some, hard decisions and change things up along the way.
All right, I got lots of thoughts. How much time we got? Okay, so my first thought to this is, number one, are you even measuring profitability? Because I will say, I think that's a big thing. A lot of people don't invest the time and resources into measuring their own profitability. Mm-hmm. Okay, so that's number one. Yep. Number two is, I think the beauty of what happened with COVID is it made people realize what their core businesses were, mm-hmm. and that they had to focus on their core businesses. I used to say this all the time. There's nothing wrong with being just a caterer. Do we need to be a decor company? Do we need to be this? Do we need to be that? Sometimes it's really good to focus on what you're good at and stay in that lane, because there's so many other people that are good in those other businesses.
Sure.
Okay. And then what was my third thought? I had number three. I think something that I see all the time, and this is something about ownership. Mm-hmm. I think a lot of times owners look at the revenue number mm-hmm. way more than they look at the bottom line profitability number, mm-hmm. because they want to be, let's just pretend they want to be a $20 million caterer. Mm-hmm. And so they're like, I want to be a $20 million caterer. And then they're going to make, let's say, 10% profitability. Great. Mm-hmm. What's wrong with being a $10 million caterer and making 20% profitability?
That's right. It's
right?
Number.
And I think that's a big thing for owners. And I love all my owners. I love working with them. But at times I kind of challenge that to say, what's the big deal with that big number? Who cares? Mm-hmm. Right? Make the money the smart way and don't kill yourself doing it. And I think that's a really
10% a lot more. That
right.
Is a lot more.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that becomes a big part of measuring your profitability. We always measured profitability, but you got to look at how you're marking things up. And if your team is spending a lot of time and this is what we probably make the most money on. This is a global statement. Beverage first, food second, service third. That tends to be the 3 buckets of most money at catering companies.
This is crazy. How
well,
much
yeah. Well, that's not as profitable as it used to be because it's gone up so much. But the point is, when we spend so much time on all the auxiliary items, which we're not necessarily experts on selling, but we're just marking up X percentage, great. It's adding to that revenue line, but it's lowering your profitability. And so I just think that that's a really smart thing people have to look at. I could talk about this for days. I love talking about it. I mean, when is this really important? You need to measure profitability before that salesperson sends the proposal, not after.
Yep.
Right. And when do we all measure it? After the event?
Right. We've got it set up so we see it before, and then we look at it after too to see if anything major changed or anything like that. And that's just such a guidepost to like, can we give a discount to this? Do we really want business that bad that we're going to break below the threshold that we usually sell to because we want to get this piece of business? And
sure,
at least you have the information and you can make a decision with some information instead of just saying, okay, give them a 10% discount because we want to get that piece of business. But maybe it doesn't always make sense.
Exactly.
What have you seen as the relationship with owners? Say it's, an $8 to $10 million catering company, as they start to grow and hiring and kind of taking themselves out of the day-to-day. How important is that? Or should the owner always be in the back of the kitchen overseeing and stuff like that? Like, what have you seen as a successful recipe in that instance?
I've seen everything. I wish I had one answer. It depends on the owner.
Okay.
And what I'll say there is a lot of owners love to be involved. It's their passion. It's their baby. They're always going to be there.
Yeah.
So my suggestion always is really be honest and define what you want your role to be, and then find the people and trust the people around you to run your company to let you be at the strategic 35,000 feet level. Now, not everyone can do that.
Yeah.
They want to be, but not everyone can. I find as they get older, as they age, they decide they want to do it and they have to figure it out. But really, 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 and I'm seeing this more and more now, more and more owners are leaning on their teams. I don't see as many children getting involved in the business or family members. You're unique.
Yeah.
But I don't see that as much anymore because I think a lot of kids saw like their parents working nonstop for 30 years and they're like, I'm going to do something else, right?
I tried to do it for a second, but it didn't work for me.
It didn't work. No, it's in your blood. But
Right.
to that point, I really think it's defining your strong leadership team. And this is the hardest thing for owners. Let them lead and let them make decisions and let them manage up to you. And at times you got to just kind of step back and say, you know what, I'm going to let you do it and I'm not going to get involved, which is really hard for owners.
Yeah. I'm Uncle Dave is really, since COVID, 95% retired. We talk all the time on the phone and go through the numbers, and
good.
I make sure he feels comfortable about what's going on, and he's so supportive of what we're working on in the catering business.
That's awesome.
I'm really happy about that. But I'm also trying to put the people in place so I can be in that 35,000 foot area.
Yep.
We've hired a director of operations. I've hired an executive chef, and we have Rain, the director of sales.
Sure.
We've really been cultivating a good team that way. And it's hard for me, but I have not worked one Saturday event this year, which is like
And I bet your family loves it.
Yeah, right. And now I'm trying to go to some, to talk to the event directors and see the venue managers, and I'm doing some of that still, which I want to do more of, but not staying at one event for 8 hours to make sure the tenderloins cook perfectly.
Isn't it the best?
Yeah. No, it's really great, and it's great for the business and for work-life balance and all that stuff too. So I'm really excited about that. I've been trying to get to that point for a long time, and I hired an executive chef. We actually went to culinary school together, Jason, and he's not going to every event either. He's done an awesome job hiring enough people, it's been tough since COVID to get enough people to work. but he's done an amazing job. And our team, again, people have asked what's been, your recipe for success. And it's number one, our venue relationships. Is number two, our team. Our team has done so well over the last few years that we've been able to continue to grow. And because of that, they give us referrals. We do a great job at a wedding. And those referrals keep coming to us. So it's been a big part of our growth for sure. Is our
good
team.
For you. But that's kind of going back to your other question. You invested in people, right? Mm-hmm. You had to let you step away a little bit. I mean, I always said there's nothing I love better than pulling into the loading dock with my car still running, right? And I get to go into the event, and my favorite Saturday was when I would drive to 5 events and surprise the team. I loved not being accountable to anyone and going and seeing the team and saying great job, and then meeting the client, hugging and kissing the venue person, and rolling out. It was the best.
Yep. Last Saturday was my daughter is 14 years old, my oldest daughter, and she worked her first event on Saturday out at the Bricks. And I went to pick her up, and I was like, I should put on a collared shirt and go say hi. And I worked out late that day, which was weird for me. Usually I'm always like 5 in the morning, but we had to do something else. So anyways, worked out in the afternoon, took a shower, put on a Deuce's Wild t-shirt and shorts, and I'm like, I'm just going to go pick her up, But then I saw her in the parking lot. She's like, oh, this lady from church is there, and this guy's there. And, we know a bunch of people there at the wedding randomly. So I had to go in. So I went in with my shirt and shorts on anyways. But it was a really good event. And Marcos in the kitchen told me how good she did. And the event manager, Beth, told me that she did a great job. So it's just cool.
Isn't that the best?
Yeah, it's very cool.
And did your daughter like working?
She did. She started working 2 days a week at the restaurant just for the summer. And then this was her first event. So she's liking it so far. She likes, she needs Lululemon money. So that's why.
Oh, well, geez, she's going to have to work a lot of hours.
Yeah, right.
That's awesome.
So I think we covered most of what I actually had down. What are some of your plans for the future? You're going to continue the consulting business, and what else?
Wow, no one's ever asked me that question. Thank you. Mm-hmm. Well, okay, part of why I started my own consulting business is my love of travel, which I've already mentioned a few times.
Yes.
So during the COVID years, I used to go to Mexico for a month.
Okay.
And during COVID, I was like, maybe I'll extend a little longer because I could have fresh open air there. Yeah. And I extended to 3 months. Well, guess what I've done now? I've extended it to 6 months a year. So
in Mexico.
So now I rent a place. I don't own a place. I rent a place from November through May in Puerto Vallarta. I've developed an unbelievably strong community there. I love it. I love being there.
And you can work from there too.
I work from there. I most of my clients I Zoom. I do so much work on the West Coast that I actually just make Puerto Vallarta Airport my hub airport versus O'Hare. So I'm doing that. I love what I'm doing. I've been doing this 7 years. I want to keep doing it.
Nice.
I'm about to hit the road. I already mentioned this, and do a 5-week road trip on the East Coast. I'm going to visit everyone on the East Coast.
That's
so cool. You know what? I just kind of got this freedom. I got a great life. Live downtown Chicago.
So
been with my guy for a long time.
In the catering space, how could you help them the most? Where are you most positioned to help? Someone that's just getting started, that wants to go to the next level, or if someone's listening and they aren't sure what to do, they know they want to do catering, but they're not sure, how can you help them, and how should they reach out to you?
So my website's fultonmarketconsulting.com is number one, or they can always reach out to you and you'll send it my way, I'm sure.
Yep. Right.
So what's the initial call I usually get? I usually get it from the owner, and the owner is saying, will you come work with our sales team? We want them to learn how to sell and not be order takers. That's the usual phone call.
Oh my God, it sounds like Uncle Dave.
I bet that was Uncle Dave too, but that's exactly right. Hi, Uncle Dave.
Yeah.
And then I always say to the owner, okay, great. I'd like to come in and do a discovery session. And in that discovery session, I love to talk to the salespeople and meet everyone that touches the sale. I love to talk to the executive chef, the owner, ops, anyone. But I usually will say most of the time I end up working with the people on structure. And what does that mean? Do they have goals? Do they have a compensation plan? Do they understand what they're selling? What do I need to work with them on? Do they know how to qualify business? And then I work with them. And this is what I've been doing for 7 years now. I work with them, and then we kind of fall in love with each other and I become part of the team and the culture. And then I end up working with people on retainer in the long run. So I end up being, it might be an hour a month. But one thing I do is, as you can already tell, I can never stop talking. I hold people accountable. And I'm really good at just following up and saying, okay, you said you were going to do this. Did you do it? And holding people accountable. Because let's be real. A lot of people in our industry are super creative, and they aren't as much structure based as they are creative, food, design, all that based. So I like to provide that structure for them. I haven't done events in 7 years, so I don't want to say I'm removed from that side of the business. I mean, I can still probably figure out how to put an event together, but it really is more about the management and structure side of running your business. Is what I would say.
That's the core of any company,
right?
That's really going to get you to where you need to go. That's awesome. Well,
yeah, I love it.
Like I said, hopefully I don't get a bill in the mail at the end.
Yeah, you won't get a bill.
I'm just kidding.
Maybe I'll come out for a sandwich or something.
Hey, you definitely need to come out to the restaurant. I'll tell Uncle Dave we can have some good barbecue together.
Yes.
Well, at the end of every show, we do what's called the lightning round. So I got a list of 10 things. You just give me your first reaction to what I say, okay?
Okay.
All right, here we go. Favorite Chicago venue?
Field Museum.
Favorite online chef or celebrity chef?
Oh, he owns Pujol in Mexico City, Enrique Olvera.
Nice. What's your favorite style of service at a wedding?
Sweep, which means no trays.
No trays. Plated service.
Plated, sorry. Yep.
Okay. Favorite cuisine to cater?
Oh. Well, probably Mexican for me.
Yeah.
Everyone loves a taco bar.
Yeah, for sure. No doubt about that.
But I think every chef loves Asian food. So I probably sold way more.
I've been on one. Oh, we'll get to that in a second. Okay.
Yeah.
A guilty pleasure food.
Oh my goodness. Oh, geez. I got to think about that one. Let me come back to that one.
Okay.
That's cheating the lightning round, though, isn't it?
It's cheating the lightning round. Come on, one thing you just
Okay,
love.
I make a killer shortbread cookie. How's that?
Ooh, good. I love it.
Yeah. That's via Ted Lasso. I got inspired, and now I've mastered it.
All right, this is a good one. Essential event planning tool.
A clipboard. You like that answer?
Yeah, that's a good one.
Okay, I always think a clipboard makes you look smart, and I think putting a cable over your arm will get you in any loading dock in the city.
Yeah, or a nice pan of rib tips will get you in any loading dock. I promise that.
feed the loading dock people.
What is some of the one of the most memorable events you've been a part of, whether it was at BluePlate or some of your current consulting clients? Any event that stands out to you?
I've catered for every president since Clinton.
No kidding.
Yeah.
Wow, that's very cool.
So I think for until I stopped catering. So so working for every president. I mean, during 9/11, this one's significant. I remember my next door neighbor knew a lot of people at the White House, and the day after 9/11, we did an event in an airport hangar, which was pretty cool with President Bush at the time.
That must have been so crazy. At an airport hangar after 9/11.
Yeah, it was intense.
All right, so because you like to travel, within that context, top culinary destination.
It's got to be Italy.
Italy.
Right? It's got to be Italy, I think, because I love Italian food.
Yeah. Okay, now along the same lines, favorite beach to visit? You love beaches.
I love beaches.
What's the best
Well, I got
one?
two.
Okay.
I got Siesta Key in Sarasota, Florida, because my parents live there.
Okay.
Los Muertos Beach in Puerto Vallarta.
Okay.
I have a chair with my name on it there.
That's got to be the favorite. Okay, most inspiring industry leader. So, who's a caterer that you looked up to, or someone in the industry that you really look up to?
Oh my goodness. You know, I have a lot of clients that I love working with, so I'd love to say all of them. I just got off of a week at 24 Carats out in Southern California, and they do a phenomenal job.
Is that the giant catering company?
They're a big caterer. Yeah, Laura was with me on stage.
Okay.
And they recently opened a hotel. So they're diversifying, and I got to stay at it, and it's phenomenal. So they're just so lovely. That's top of my mind. And they just do very creative things at the level that they are.
Yeah, that's so cool.
But everyone, that's such a hard answer. I could say you.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm so proud of you. Look how far you've come.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Thank you so much. All right. Last one. This is going to be a hard one too. Best piece of advice for a growing catering company. If you had to give one.
Listen and network. I gave two. I say to salespeople, listen, so I'm cheating on this one.
Yeah.
I think salespeople, including me, we all talk too much. But if you listen, your clients are telling you what they want. Just listen more.
That's really
catering
good.
Company, network, and be vulnerable and ask questions. You don't know everything.
Yeah.
Right? So learn from your peers and ask.
All right. This is extra bonus. Now, one thing that really changed us was getting a software company like Catersource or Caterers. We use Caterers. What do you tell a company that doesn't have one in place, like something like that, like a CRM or a database like Caterers or something? Do you say it's a must, or you can do it without it, or what's your opinion there?
I mean, I think it's a must for the sake of production more than anything.
Right.
I mean, not even on the sales end, but for consistency, it's imperative. I mean, and just to talk about the profitability, I think it's so important. There's so many.
Is there any that you recommend outside of Caterers?
Well, I'd say most of my clients use Total Party Planner, Caterers. Okay. I grew up on Cater Expert and what used to be called Synergy, that's now called Fusion.
Yeah.
I know there's a new one.
Actually switching to Fusion because our director of operations used it at his other job, and he says it's more, you can kind of change things up, more customizable and things like that. So we're
there's a new one called Allocate coming out.
Allocate, maybe that's the
Allocate.
one he was talking about.
Yeah, that's probably what your ops person's thinking about.
Allocate.
You know, I would say this. There's one called Curate. There's so many. Mm-hmm. Perfect example of go to Catersource, look at all of their programs and see what's a fit for you.
Yeah.
But again, I think it really becomes, and then there's I think it's Gather is the food one that people are using now too. Mm-hmm. One thing I will say is I'm not a techie person.
Yeah.
I'm a salesperson, but it was a game changer for me to be able to expedite proposals and get them out there, but never use a system to stunt your creativity either. I always challenge salespeople. If it's a big event, get outside the box, do all the nuts and bolts in the system, and then get a beautiful proposal to the customer and hand deliver it. Right.
So, for sure. So that's something that we're looking at is like actually taking the technical information out, but then putting that proposal into something foofy that looks pretty, got pictures of our product on it. So you recommend that especially for weddings?
Yeah. I mean, when you're buying a car, I'm the customer. You don't want, in my opinion, I don't like when things look like a BEO. When it looks like a banquet event order, it just looks to me like you're just shopping online. That's me.
Wow.
Now I'm older, right? So I'm of the school of just that. I'm of the school of relationship development, personal relationships, understanding what the client, how they're going to want to receive the document, which 99% of the time now is email, but it has to look great. Right. So, I'm not saying any of these programs don't do that. They all have templates and to make things look beautiful, but I would say really push that from the sales side. But again, I think the system's number one function is production.
Yeah.
Without a doubt.
It's a
Without a
game
doubt.
changer for chefs, for
Yes.
prep lists, for ordering, scheduling, all that stuff. There's so much involved
But
with
food
that now.
costs and profitability and all that stuff. I think that's all
Absolutely.
in there.
Yep. Wow. Well, you gave us some extra credit there. Thank you.
Yes.
Jennifer,
And I'm
I'm
not sending
so
an extra
excited
bill.
to talk to you. We have to get together again.
I know.
You have really impacted our business and got us on the right path years ago, and I thank you for that, and I'm excited to continue to work together and see you in the future, hopefully at Catersource, maybe at the MIBE event. That would be
If
cool.
not in Chicago, right?
All right. Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much, Duce. I'm so proud of you. Way
All
to
right.
go.
Thank you so much.
Talk soon.
All right.
Bye.
Bye-bye.